In the sun-scorched village of Jaru, nestled near the eastern edge of the Nile Delta, a girl named Sitre lived in shadows cast not by the palm trees, but by whispered lies. Barefoot, slender, and cloaked in rags too worn to claim color, she darted between mud-brick walls, her eyes scanning every face for suspicion. Her crime? None proven. But in the eyes of the village, she was already guilty. It began with a missing ring, an old golden loop once belonging to the temple priestess, Lady Ea. On the morning it vanished, Sitre had been seen sweeping the temple floor, her broom dragging silently over the stone tiles. By dusk, her name was on every tongue. "She took it," hissed one. "She always had a thief's look," said another. She protested, but it didn't matter. The villagers believed the worst, because it was easier than finding the truth. They tore her from her mud hut, threw her into the center of the square, and let the crowd decide. An elder shouted, "Let the gods deal with her. If she's innocent, let her survive the desert." That night, under the fading light of Ra's gaze, they tied her wrists with flax rope and cast her beyond the village gates into the sand sea with no food, no water, and no hope. The desert was not silent. Jackals howled. Winds howled louder. And Sitre, she did not cry. She ran. With the determination of someone who refused to be erased, she ran. But every footprint behind her was a trail for hunters. The village guards, ordered to ensure she never returned, were close. Her body ached, her throat cracked, but still she moved forward until her legs buckled. Just as darkness crept in, a shadow blocked the moonlight. A figure knelt beside her, a man, his robes dusted with red sand, a leather satchel slung across his chest. His eyes were kind, foreign, and not from Jaru. "Don't be afraid," he said, offering a hand. "You're not a thief to me." Sitre blinked. In a world that called her cursed, this stranger's voice felt like mercy. Sitre awoke in a cave carved into the base of a wind-worn cliff. The air was cooler here, shaded by ancient rock. Her hands were free, wrists sore but no longer bound by rope. A fire crackled gently nearby, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. She sat up slowly, unsure whether she was safe or merely caught by another kind of danger. The stranger, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and a trimmed black beard, stirred a small pot over the fire. He didn't look like a bandit. His robes were simple but clean, his movements calm and deliberate. When he noticed she was awake, he handed her a clay bowl of warm lentils and barley. She hesitated, staring at him. "You haven't eaten in days," he said. "You'll need your strength." "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Because lies shouldn't be stronger than truth," he replied. His name was Mena, a traveler, a healer, once a scribe of the temple city of Perbast, now wandering the edges of the known world. His eyes carried a burden, a man running from something, though he didn't say what. Sitre told him her name, her village, the ring she never touched. Mena didn't flinch. "People fear what they don't understand," he said, "and they blame the ones with no power." That night, under the stars, he gave her a plan. "We head west, toward the city of Neset. There, you can start again. But first, you must survive the journey. And second," he paused, "you must learn to fight." "Fight?" she asked, wide-eyed. "Not just with hands," he said, "but with mind, with silence, with courage." Over the next days, Mena taught her how to blend with the dunes, how to track birds for water, how to read clouds and winds like messages from the gods. Slowly, her fear hardened into focus. The girl who had fled with cracked feet and hopeless lungs now stood taller, learned to listen with care and speak with intent. But the desert, like fate, was never quiet for long. One night, just as they reached a canyon pass, Mena froze. In the distance dust, hoofbeats, torches. "The hunters," he whispered. "They've found us." They rode like a sandstorm, fast, relentless, without mercy. The village guards, wrapped in linen and fury, had followed the trail across dunes and cracked earth, driven not by justice, but by pride. Sitre and Mena crouched behind a ridge of jagged rocks, the flicker of torches drawing closer. "They will not stop," Mena murmured, clutching a curved blade hidden beneath his robe. "Not until your name is erased or your blood stains the sand." Sitre's hands trembled. The desert had changed her, hardened her, but fear still clawed its way back into her chest. Mena placed a hand on her shoulder. "Listen. You have two choices. Keep running and remain prey, or face them and reclaim your name." Her eyes met his. She nodded. They moved silently through the canyon, finding higher ground. Mena scattered dust behind them to confuse the tracks, then positioned Sitre atop a ledge overlooking the narrow pass. Below, 5 riders dismounted, their voices cruel and taunting. "The thief girl is near," one spat. "We'll drag her back and let the crowd decide." Sitre's jaw clenched. That crowd had already decided, without truth, without mercy. She watched as Mena stepped into view, arms raised. "She's not with me," he lied. "She ran east." They didn't believe him. A guard lunged forward, blade drawn. Mena ducked and countered with a swift arc of steel, disarming the man and sending him sprawling. Chaos erupted. Sitre, breathing hard, saw her chance. She loosed a rock from her perch and hurled it down. It struck a guard squarely in the head, dropping him. Another climbed toward her, but she kicked sand into his face and scrambled higher. Mena fought below like a man with purpose, every move calculated, precise. 2 guards fell. The others fled. Silence returned, broken only by the wind. Mena sheathed his blade, panting. "You did well," he said. Sitre looked down at her hands, bloody, scraped, but steady. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "Sometimes survival doesn't ask for what we want," Mena replied. "Only for what we must become." In the stillness of the night, Sitre realized something. She was no longer just a girl running from lies. She was becoming someone who could chase the truth and face whatever stood in the way. The city of Henin Nesut rose from the desert like a promise, a gleaming cluster of sandstone towers, bustling streets, and temple spires etched with hieroglyphs. Sitre stood at its edge, draped in a borrowed shawl, her feet aching but her eyes wide with wonder. It was a place of voices and movement, carts creaking with goods, children darting between vendors, chants rising from temple courtyards. Here, no one knew her name, and that was her greatest shield. Mena led her through the crowds with quiet confidence. "Stay close. Cities have long shadows. They swallow the careless." They found shelter in the weaver's quarter, where Mena's old friend, a woman named Kayet, offered them a small room above her shop. Kayet was sharp-tongued and sharp-eyed. She looked Sitre over with suspicion, but said nothing. That night, over lentil stew, Mena shared his plan. There is a judge here. Respected. Honest. He once served the high courts in Waset. If we can bring your case to him, you may be cleared. Sitre frowned. They have no proof. Only gossip. Mena nodded. Then we must give them truth. But not yet. First, we must learn who started the lie. Over the next days, Sitre learned more than she ever had in her village. She helped Kayet spin thread, watched how the city moved, listened to gossip, and mapped the market's rhythms. And she began to hear whispers of a trader named Neshu, recently wealthy, seen speaking with the priestess Aya days before the ring vanished. Mena's eyes sharpened when she told him, Neshu. I know that name. They followed the rumor to the temple district. Sitre, disguised as a flower seller, waited while Mena slipped inside the scribe's archives. He emerged hours later holding a wax tablet. It's here. Neshu sold a ring to a merchant in Mennefer. The date matches the day after the theft. Sitre felt her chest tighten. Proof. Real proof. But proof was dangerous. If Neshu learned they were onto him, he might disappear, or worse. We need a witness, Mena said. Someone brave enough to speak. In a city so full of noise, Sitre now had a voice of her own, and she was ready to use it. The judge's court was a large colonnaded hall near the heart of Henan Nesut, where matters of land, theft, and disputes were settled under the carved eyes of Ma'at, goddess of truth. Sitre stood outside its pillars, her heart pounding like a drum. For weeks, she had lived in the shadows of lies. Now she stood at the doorstep of justice. Mena had arranged everything. The tablet with Neshu's transaction. The merchant's testimony, secured with a quiet favor and a purse of coin. And now, all they needed was for Sitre to speak for the first time, not as a girl accused, but as one who accused. Inside, the judge sat on a raised platform, flanked by scribes. He was elderly, with a beard streaked with white and eyes like piercing slits. When Mena spoke on Sitre's behalf, the judge raised a hand. Let the girl speak, he said. All eyes turned to her. Her breath caught, but she stepped forward. I am Sitre, daughter of Tia, she began. I was cast out of my village for a crime I did not commit. A ring was stolen. I was blamed. No trial, no proof. Murmurs rippled through the hall. She held up the wax tablet. This proves a man named Neshu sold that same ring a day after the theft. The judge leaned forward. And where is this Neshu? He is in the market square, Mena said, selling incense and lies. The judge nodded. Then bring him. Neshu was dragged in minutes later, protesting loudly, but his face turned pale when he saw the tablet. That means nothing, he shouted. She probably stole it and sold it to me. But the merchant who had bought the ring stepped forward. Number Neshu brought it himself, said it was a gift from a priestess. The judge narrowed his eyes. A priestess who now says she only saw the girl in the temple that morning. She never accused her directly. Silence fell. Then, with a wave of his hand, the judge spoke. The girl is innocent. The man shall be tried for false accusation and deceit. A gasp swept through the crowd. Sitre stood frozen, tears stinging her eyes. She had won not with anger, but with truth. As Neshu was taken away, Mena looked at her proudly. You've reclaimed more than your name. You've reclaimed your story. and for the first time, the world felt wide open. The journey back to Jaru was not made in silence, it was made in strength. Sitre, no longer the trembling girl cast into the desert, now rode a small donkey gifted by Kayet, while Mena walked beside her. The sun scorched as before. The wind still whispered secrets across the sand. But Sitre's back was straight, her chin high. She held a sealed letter from the judge, stamped with the symbol of Ma'at, declaring her innocence and ordering restitution. Mena had warned her, justice is not always welcomed by those who live on lies, but she needed closure. She needed to look her past in the eye. As they approached the village, a quiet unease settled over Jaru. The girl they had banished now returned with a calm face and a stranger at her side. Children peeked from doorways. The elders gathered under the date palm, uncertain how to react. It was the priestess Iya who stepped forward first, her eyes narrowing at the sight of the scroll. Sitre said nothing. She handed over the decree. As the priestess read, her face changed, uncertainty replaced by shame. We acted on what we believed, she murmured, barely meeting Sitre's gaze. You acted on fear, Mena replied coldly, and nearly destroyed her. A few voices tried to defend the past, but most were silent, unsure, embarrassed. Sitre turned to the crowd. I was branded a thief without proof. I walked through fire, not for revenge, but to return with the truth. I don't seek your approval, only that you never do this again to another girl. The wind picked up, stirring the dust around her sandals. She looked at the place that had been her prison, her pain, and now her victory. She could have stayed, demanded justice, claimed land or gifts, but she didn't want that. She turned away. As she and Mena left, the villagers watched, murmuring amongst themselves. She didn't hear apologies, but she heard silence, and that was enough. Back on the road, Mena smiled. You ended your story with grace. No, she said softly. I just started a new one. The desert stretched ahead again, but this time it didn't seem empty. It seemed full of choices. 2 days west of Jaru, where the sun burned less fiercely and acacia trees cast rare shadows across the dunes, lay an oasis known only to desert traders and old healers. Mena called it the Whispering Oasis, for its winds sang through palm fronds like ancient voices. Here, they stopped not to rest alone, but to meet someone. Mena had sent a message weeks earlier, carried by a hawk trained in his youth. The message was to his mentor, a famed herbalist named Sahura, who once served in the courts of Pharaoh Akem. Sitre was curious. Why meet him now? She asked. Because he holds what you need next, Mena replied. Sahura arrived before sunset, riding a mule and leaning on a carved staff, his face lined with age, but his eyes alert and sharp. He greeted Mena with a tight embrace. When introduced to Sitre, he examined her with a healer's eye. Strong bones, eyes like storm clouds. A survivor, he declared. Around the fire that night, Sahura shared stories of ancient remedies and distant kingdoms. But it wasn't herbs he brought. It was knowledge. There are more like you, he told Sitre. Girls cast out, blamed, silenced. I've seen them in cities and villages alike. He placed a scroll in her hands. This contains the names of those who might listen, help, Shelter others like you. If you want to do more than survive, start there. Sitre held the scroll tightly. You want me to become something more? No, Sahura said. I believe you already are. You just need to choose your shape. Mena nodded. Your journey doesn't have to end at justice. It can begin with it. For the first time, Sitre saw beyond her pain. She could teach others what she learned, how to fight with truth, how to survive injustice, how to rise without bitterness. That night, she stared into the stars and imagined walking into towns not as a girl with no name, but as a symbol of hope. The wind around the oasis whispered once more, but this time, it didn't sound like ghosts. It sounded like a calling, and Sitre, marked by lies but shaped by truth, was ready to answer it. By the time the sun rose again, Sitre had made her decision. She would not return to the silence of safety. She would walk into noise, into chaos, into the lives of those forgotten. With Mena and Sahura's blessing, she joined a traveling caravan bound for the southern provinces, a colorful train of traders, musicians, and scribes carrying goods, tales, and secrets. The caravan was led by a woman named Abet, a fierce and wise matriarch whose laughter could silence arguments. When Sitre asked for passage, Abet studied her. You don't look like cargo or coin, she said. Why should I carry you? Sitre replied. Because I carry something heavier than gold, and I know how to lighten it for others. Abet raised an eyebrow, then waved her in. We'll see. On the road, Sitre became part of something larger. She helped tend the sick, learned to patch tents, and listened to stories around the fire. In the faces of abandoned children, quiet girls, and shunned widows, she saw fragments of herself. She spoke gently to them, shared her story in pieces not to inspire, but to remind them they were not alone. One evening, near a village called Iunu, the caravan stopped for rest. A young girl named Risha, no older than 10, clung to Sitre's side. They said I was cursed, Risha whispered, eyes full of tears. They left me. Sitre knelt, held her small hands. They were wrong. People often fear what they don't understand. But you are not meant to be feared. You are meant to be heard. That night, Sitre sang a story to the group, not of gods or pharaohs, but of a girl wrongly accused, thrown into the desert, and reborn in truth. The caravan listened in silence. When she finished, even the winds paused to hear her breath. Abet approached her afterward. You're more than a passenger. You're the voice we didn't know we needed. From that day, Sitre's role changed. She wasn't just a traveler. She was a guide, a listener, a speaker for those whose stories had been buried. The road ahead was long, filled with dust and danger. But with every mile, she stitched a new legacy, not one written by others, but one she authored herself. The caravan reached the holy city of Waset during the festival of Opet, when the streets overflowed with color, incense, and pilgrims from every corner of Kemet. Sitre had heard tales of Waset's towering temples and sacred processions, but nothing prepared her for the grandeur. Gold glinted from temple walls, priests chanted beneath banners of blue and red, and crowds surged like waves. But amid the celebration, danger waited. As the caravan unloaded goods near the temple of Amun, chaos erupted. A stall caught fire, then another. Screams rang out as smoke curled into the sky. Panic spread. Children cried. Traders fled. Someone shouted, "It's sabotage!" Sitre grabbed Risha's hand and darted into the smoke, searching for the source. She found it behind a temple pillar. 3 masked men, cloaked in ash-stained linen, were pouring oil onto crates of grain. She didn't think. She shouted, "Guards!" and hurled a stone, hitting one squarely in the back. The men turned, startled. One rushed her with a blade, but she dodged. Behind her, temple guards arrived, iron-tipped spears in hand. The saboteurs were subdued. When the smoke cleared, the high priest demanded answers. The men confessed they had been hired to disrupt the festival by a merchant threatened by the rise of smaller traders. Cowards in high places, hiding behind fire and fear. Sitre stepped forward, face smudged with ash, but voice steady. "They almost burned this city for profit. You must protect more than gold. You must protect justice." The priest stared at her. "Who are you to speak so boldly?" "Someone who knows what it feels like to be burned by lies," she said. Word of her bravery spread quickly. By sundown, people sought her out not just to thank her, but to ask her to speak at the next gathering of voices in the Hall of Truth. It was an honor reserved for scribes, priests, and elders. Sitre was neither, but her words had power now. She had earned them through fire, exile, and truth. That night, Mena found her standing at the temple gate. "You always had a flame inside you," he said quietly. "But now you're the fire." And Sitre knew her journey wasn't just survival anymore. It was leadership. Under the high dome of the Hall of Truth, where walls were lined with stone records and laws of Ma'at, Sitre stood barefoot before a circle of judges, priests, and nobles. Her linen robe was clean but simple, her hair braided with care, and her gaze unflinching. Silence ruled the hall. Then she spoke not with fury, but with clarity. She told them her story, from the day she was cast out for a theft she didn't commit, to the moment she returned with proof, not vengeance. She spoke of girls abandoned, of names ruined, of lies spoken as casually as the wind. And then she said something no one expected. "I am not here for punishment. I am here for protection. I ask that you make a law that no one, rich or poor, man or woman, may be cast out without proof, without trial, without voice." Murmurs rose among the elders. One old scribe stood and said, "You seek to challenge custom?" "I seek to honor truth," she answered. The hall fell quiet again. The head judge, who had watched her without blinking, finally rose. "Let the record show that this girl, once labeled a thief, now speaks as a guardian of justice. Her petition shall be reviewed." That evening, as Sitre walked through the city's quiet streets, people bowed their heads in respect. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a symbol. At the city gates, Mena waited with Risha and Sahura. "What now?" Mena asked. "Now," Sitre smiled. "We return to the road. There are more voices to hear, more truths to protect." As the sun dipped behind the western dunes, she remembered the moment it all began: the desert, the ropes, the lies, and the hand that reached for her, that stranger who offered help when the world turned away. She looked at Mena. "You changed everything with one gesture," she said softly. He shook his head. "Number, I only reminded you of what you already carried." Together they walked into the coming night. A healer, a storyteller, a girl once branded a thief. now a beacon of justice. And though many roads lay ahead, Sitre knew this: the past no longer held her. She held the future. Sitre's journey was never just about clearing her name, it was about reclaiming her voice, her dignity, and her future. From a hunted outcast to a protector of justice, she rose, not through power or revenge, but through courage, wisdom, and truth. Her story reminds us that even when the world turns its back, one kind hand, one act of belief can change everything. Now it's your turn. What part of Sitre's journey touched you the most? Was it the stranger who helped her, the moment she stood before the judges, or her decision to help others like her? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts mean more than you know. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, like, share, and subscribe for more ancient tales with timeless lessons.